case we have two students that are missing, and then they've called in and everything like that. Just give us another minute and I'll get started with everything. And let's see here. This is great. And Bill, Dave, Mark, okay.
This is Jody. I can hear you all.
Oh, Jody, hi. Yeah, that's
Jody.
fine. That's good. Well, hearing's just as good as seeing. You'll miss my 3 pages of PowerPoint that I'm going to do, but it'll, yeah. But Dave can fill you in on my style. It's pretty direct, I think.
Yes.
And he goes, anyway, let's get started. It's a great day wherever you are, and I don't want to keep everybody. We've got our student group. Again, I'm recording this. So if you guys want to repeat this or something, it'll be available. I'll put it on YouTube and everything like that. So what I want to do is I want to devote the day, this hour. We want to only keep you an hour. I want to devote this hour to focusing on the grower and what the grower's needs are, what the grower has been experiencing, how the grower does its business. What specific things have you seen over the time that you've been growing that you've noticed, and what the purpose of this is to give the students a chance to ask questions and get a better understanding of how the industry works from a grower's perspective, because I think that's really, really important. The way I'm going to do this is kind of handle it like a panel conversation. So I'll sort of talk about things and ask you guys to respond. It's Bill and Mark and Dave, and as well, and also I got Mark and Jody, and I'm gonna ask you some questions, and then we're gonna do it. But before I get there, I want to share my screen, and I want to go over 3 slides for both the audience and for the students, because I like to start this way and kind of kick it off. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to share my screen, and I was actually going to pipe in Christmas music, but that was just too much. You know, when it's 100 degrees out and stuff, I thought that would be too much.
That was a good move.
Yeah, I didn't think it'd do. Anyway, so here we go. This is our meeting. I've got 3 slides, and this is more for the students than it is for the panel. The important thing from a student perspective is, at least in marketing, is that people have a general tendency to view the world as if it started the day before they were born. In other words, they look at the world like it is real time and it's always been this way. And for marketing people, one of the things that I try to do in our big class is to try to get them to remove that bias and try to understand exactly how the markets are moving, and from that they can make much better decisions about how to apply current technologies to help increase demand, which is why we're here. So I want to give a perspective. This is more again for the students. I want to I was thinking about how to introduce this, and I thought what I would do is I would try as best as I could to capture what the real Christmas tree market was 30 years ago. These are not perfect data, and as I've been working with Dave and Bill and a bunch, we don't really know all the data. So bear with me. I think these are fairly close. 30 years ago, roughly 20,000 Christmas tree farms around the US. I back calculated that from a number that I got recently of 15,000, that there had been some decline in tree farms just as a result of attrition. Basically, we kick around a number of 40 million, 35 to 40 million trees were sold. And the channels of distribution were very simple at the time. You cut and you had an independent lot, because this is before the advent of the big boxes. And for me to give the students a perspective is the hot new technology 30 years ago was America Online, which was our version of the internet at the time. And the average human spent 20 minutes a day tops on the internet, and it was a dial-up version that had about I think it was 50 kilobytes per second was the speed. If we fast forward now to today, again, we think we have less Christmas tree farms, 15,000 Christmas tree farms. We have around 22 million real Christmas trees sold. We think that's declining. And the new entrants to the market are fake Christmas trees, which we think the number's floating around 12 million. And of course, that's been increasing from 0 to today, which poses a competitive threat. I think a big thing also is in the channels of distribution. We've had a couple channels that have emerged. The biggest one, of course, is is the big boxes, meaning the Walmarts and the Home Depots and the Lowe's and these kinds of people. These have been and these affected not just the Christmas tree industry, but all kinds of industries. And I've been involved with a number of these that have affected it, and they've changed the channel structure quite a bit. Also, there is an online presence relative to Christmas trees. We're not certain how large that is, and we're not certain how big that's going to get. But also the fake trees have also gone in the big box, specialty, craft, and also fairly good presence online. So I think the thing I want to notice here is that there's been a lot of change in the market over 30 years. Most of the students aren't 30 years old, so this was before they were born. So it's just like for old guys like Dave and I that remember back in the old days. And this was Madonna. She was the hot star back in the old days. And the new thing we've got now is the coronavirus, which is becoming a relatively big part of our day. So that's basically how the markets have changed. And of course, that's due to technology. It's due to demand. It's due to a lot of different things. But this last slide I wanted to do is to put up is Christmas as a holiday has maintained its strength. If you look at statistics relative to, for example, Christmas cards. Christmas cards for people, 1.6 billion Christmas cards are sent out each year. And that is of the 17 billion first-class letters, 1.6 billion of them are Christmas cards. So, and that compares to Valentine's Day, which is not even anywhere close. And then of course it goes Mother's Day. And for us, for all the fathers, we realize how little we're valued. So that's much different. And it goes down from there, Easter, Halloween. And the point I wanted to make by that is simply that the markets have changed, and this is really not surprising, and it shouldn't be surprising in a free market like the largest market in the world for the United States. The question now is that if our job, at least as a class, is to reverse the trend and increase demand of Christmas trees through the channel of independent lots. And that's really what we were told, that's what we're charged to do, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So, so this part of it is a panel discussion. So what I wanted to do is kind of go over a couple little highlights, and then maybe ask a couple questions of the panel members, and then maybe have some dialogue with some of the students as we move forward. So again, the purpose of this exercise is we want to provide the students with context and perspective of the Christmas tree industry from at least the grower's perspective, okay? We do have a panel of experts. I think what I'd like to do, first off, is just go through and have all the panelists introduce themselves to the class, and basically to say, your name, where you're from, what the name of your company is, and just maybe some general information. And let's start with Jody, because I might miss him because I don't have him on the video. But go ahead, Jody. Just introduce yourself to the class, and we'd be happy to carry on from there.
Yeah, hi, hello everyone. I'm Jody Wilkes with Happy Holiday Christmas Trees. I reside in Michigan, although our farm is in North Carolina, which is a little bit strange for our industry, but that's how it works for us. I've been in the business since the early 80s with my partner, Cubby Conrad Steinhardt. we started in Michigan, and like I say, we are now farming in North Carolina.
Okay, how about Mark?
Hello, I have a company called Santa and Sons Christmas Trees. We're a small independent farm and have a retail location in Los Angeles to support it. I've been in business for myself since 1983. I'm a full-time grower and was more involved in the wholesale trade, but have stepped down to where we're just farming now to support a high-end retail Christmas tree lot serving Beverly Hills and Hollywood and parts of LA.
Great. Dave, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm the production manager for Holiday Tree Farms and own a small seed business where I send my seed into my employer out of Corvallis, Oregon. And I've had the pleasure of working with Chuck on the Pine project and now this project and hopefully many more going forward.
Yeah, most of the students here are alumni of that class. We do have 3 graduate students that did a different project. Bill, would you introduce yourself to the class?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Bill Brawley. Name of the business is Greenbrier Ag Management here in Oregon. And been working in Christmas trees ever since high school, off and on, but really settled into the business in the early 80s and have been doing it ever since. Work with a couple of partners also. And I don't think we're doing anything else. All we do are Christmas trees. That's what we do.
Great.
So that's my story.
All right. So for all the students is that you can notice that what we've arranged is a panel, and these people have been in Christmas trees for a very long time, and they've experienced and reacted to all the market moves that have happened. And that's where I wanted to start my question to the panel, and anyone can take this, and if they don't, I'd be like a normal teacher and I'll choose somebody. The idea would be, my first question is, what do you think in the 30 years that you've been doing this, I don't want to give away ages and stuff, what would you say was the biggest change that happened in the Christmas tree business? And I'll start with Mark, because I think Mark's got, I can see the look in his eyes. Just the biggest difference that's today versus 30 years ago.
Right. You were talking about the market 30 years ago, and everybody here on this panel has been in the business that long. In those days, it was much more built around the independent tree lot, and it was much more small scale. Holiday Tree Farms was starting to, grow at that point, but even then it was small in comparison to today's operations. And so the biggest trend has been the diminishment of the role of the independent Christmas tree lot and the ascension of the box stores as the primary channel of delivering Christmas trees to the public. And, this is a part of the overall movement in the economy, and it's a good thing that we have the box stores, because otherwise we wouldn't be maintaining the necessary market penetration we need to maintain real Christmas trees as sort of a normal thing to do. So the independent retail lots have taken on the niche of serving a higher margin, a higher end customer. And so there's sort of a beneficial relationship between the two channels.
Okay. Jody, I wanted to just get your opinion. Do you share that opinion? Or I guess the other question is that what do you think the impact has been on your business with can you explain it? Because I think you do business with both big boxes and independents. Can you tell the difference to the students? How do they do business differently? Give them a sense of what that's about.
Well, there's been several big changes, I believe, in the industry in the last 30 to 35 years. But in the 80s and 90s, we used to send out mailers, hundreds, if not thousands of them, to the independent retailer that Mark had mentioned. Now with the internet and big box, we don't send out one. So our dialogue with our customers has changed greatly, and a lot of that's because of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I'm going to continue to ask questions, but for the students, if you do have a question, please just pipe in if you would, and I'm gonna, or I'll start calling on you guys as well too, just to get the thing moving. One of the things I was always curious when I got into this understanding of the Christmas tree market was taking a look at the product mix. And maybe Bill can hit this one if you would, is how has the product mix changed over the years? Has there been a big shift, or is it the kind of thing where it's trendy, or does it take a while for trees to become a trend? Can you kind of address that if you would?
Sure, I'll attempt that. You know, your product is really dictated by what you can grow in your geographic area, and that's other than that, we want to grow everything that we can grow that will serve the customers and offer variety. And you know, we have real basic species that we've had in the tree game for a long time with our Doug fir, and in the Northwest anyways, with Doug fir and noble fir and grand fir. Used to have some pine here, but those have fallen by the wayside, and for the most part. But probably one of the largest change in product has been the introduction of Nordman fir and Turkish fir. That's been a growing species, more and more popular. And is also made more popular because there's been a lower supply of noble fir that's been available, and so that's filled that void.
Mm-hmm.
As a retailer, could I jump in there a little bit?
Sure.
The West Coast market, the patterns are very consistent. You know, the same customers tend to buy the same species of tree year after year, and so the trends change really slowly. Nordman fir has taken a long time to climb into the mix, but is now an essential part of the mix. So in the West Coast, we have noble fir, Nordman fir, and Douglas fir, with Douglas fir kind of being the more bargain price tree. And on the East Coast, the Fraser fir is very dominant, and so the product mix is remarkably consistent with the customers. They don't change much or very easily on that.
You know, and another part of that is that the product mix has changed, I think, over the years. When we were dealing with primarily retailers that were a full spectrum business, they sold to everyone. They sold to commercial accounts. They sold to residential accounts. They sold to everyone. So there was a lot more size variance. You know, there were larger trees. There were smaller trees, and when chain stores broke into the business, they were pretty much a 6, 7, 7, 8 product, and that was it. And they stayed just with the mainstream, a Doug or a Noble, and they have branched out and become a little more full service than they had in the past. But still, in today's world, we like most customers that are looking for a full service, wide spectrum of sizes and shapes. They go to retail a lot.
Okay. Hey, I want to bring in Walter. Walter is kind of our group champion here, and I wanted to ask him because he had a personal experience with a tree lot in San Francisco, and I wanted him to share that with you guys and see whether that was consistent with what you kind of thought was going on in the industry. Can you, I can't see you, Walter, but can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Coming online right now.
That's great.
All right, so my experience was with my wife, was in the East Bay area of Hayward. She's originally from North San Francisco area, and our first Christmas together after she graduated college, wanted to go get a Christmas tree for our apartment, and I was working 12-hour shifts, sometimes doubles, things like that, so I was spending a lot of time away. she didn't want to go to the lot because she drove by to see it, and it looked, in her words, very seedy. They looked like there was like almost like the attendant was homeless, living right there in the lot. Kind of, it was just a very bad impression for her. She didn't feel safe as a young female entering the tree lot, and so we eventually found one that was better looking, a little further away, and we did purchase our real tree. But that was a real experience for her as an adult leaving college and wanting to get a real Christmas tree. But had I not been there, she wouldn't have made that purchase. She wouldn't have looked out, gone out to the lots. And that was just kind of like the inner city vibe that she had from the Christmas tree lot. It felt unsafe. It was on the corner. It looked seedy, if you will, in her words.
Mark, I wanted to kick that back to you for a sec. Can you, because what we're trying to grasp is these students are looking at this industry again as a new industry, and they don't have the experience you have. And my question to you is, is Walter, is he an anomaly, or is this going on? And the question that I had for all the panel is, a lot of industries have a standard, kind of like if you're going to be a Subway franchise, you have to have a certain. So talk a little bit about that, Mark, if you would. Thank you.
Walter's experience is far from extraordinary. One of the real issues and problems with the industry has been that the retailer, from the grower's perspective, has always been treated as the poor cousin. And even though the money that they spend and invest is very real, have never been a full partner. And so as a result, there's always been an element of quick money, the quick buck to be made selling Christmas trees. And a lot of amateurs have jumped into it trying to do that. And a lot of times that results in and the seedy is exactly the right word, presentations of trees. My website shows a picture of our tree lot in Los Angeles, and we've gone to considerable, great expense to be not seedy looking, to be very professional looking and very big and very well lit. A lot of that seediness comes from inadequate lighting, but in the city, a lot of most Christmas tree sales happen after dark. Well, if you're not well lit in the city, dark is scary and dangerous, and you're not going to get your kids out of the car in a place like that. One of the real things that is different between the independent retail lot and the box stores is that, we're tapping in more to this experience that our customers have in their minds of their own memories as a kid of going and picking out a Christmas tree. And parents are very actively trying to recreate this event with their own children. And it's one of the reasons that an independent retail lot like ours has this ability to charge a much higher margin. Now, a lot of that is, of course, higher operating expenses through a bigger installation and more service and higher quality products. But some of that too is also supplying people what they're after, and they're after more than a Christmas tree. They're after an experience and a memory with their family and their kids picking out a tree together. So this is a very big part of what we're selling, and we're selling that experience of memory to be had of picking out a tree together as a family. And it's why weekends are, hugely more busy on our independent tree lots than weekdays. And that after school is more busy than before school. And so the amateurs that Walter encountered who are denigrating the industry with their lack of performance on the retail side are disappearing. They really are. Those guys can't survive in this current market. One by one, they're vanishing because they can't get product. And if they do get product, they've got too much invested in that product to be able to afford to operate in such a slipshod manner. So it's being left to the more professional, bigger operations, and as far as independent retail lots, and then of course the box stores.
Hey, Jody, could you concur with that? Or I mean, is that the same on the East Coast or Midwest as well, would you say?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a similar trait that's going through. Now, just
Yeah.
let's say let's say that Dave, did you have something to say?
Yeah, from
sorry.
the perspective of selling to those independent lots and smaller operators at Holiday, the costs of renting the lot from the landlord, the requirements from the grower as our oversupply has come down to being more of in a balanced situation, it's getting harder and harder for those operators that don't put in that investment and the care and feeding of that lot. So we have a minimum tree requirement as far as quantity. The money has to happen before the truck leaves. When there
Okay,
was an oversupply, you could get credit. You could come in and get a few trees. It was a different environment. So I think you'll see going forward, just as Marcus said, this is going to be disappearing more and more rapidly.
okay,
That type of experience, I mean.
okay, that's good. So let me ask this question then. So if I'm a CD retailer and I want to get into this business, and I mean, can I do it though? I mean, can I call you up and Dave or Bill? Can I say, gee, I want to get in the Christmas tree business? I mean, will you qualify me, or will you, what will you do? I mean, is there a standard in the industry or is there a retailer?
There's quite a process, Chuck, in that each of the people that come on as far as clients have to pass my boss and the owner's review.
Okay.
They have to tell us who they bought from before, and we call those folks. I mean, it's a pretty tight show in my view. I don't know what Bill or Jody thinks about that one.
I'll kick in a little bit. And the process for a retailer down south, I agree with what Dave says. You know, we're more discerning on the farm. Definitely do a little picking and choosing, but on the retail end, it's much more difficult for someone to set up a lot now. Finding a location, passing all the rules and regs of whatever city they're in, the cost of renting a lot and getting power hooked up, jumping through all the hoops they have to do with city council. It's a process that is kind of self-limiting just because of the difficulties in it.
So Mark, back to you one more, because we're on a roll here, I think. Would you say that your real estate that you have, and you built your business in LA, and you have relationships that go on with your landlords and this sort of thing in a way that's beneficial, and that you're a good steward and this sort of thing, would you characterize that in terms of, or do you bounce around with lots? I'm trying to get a feel for, you know, in terms of what your market characteristics are in if I'm making sense there. I mean, yeah.
We've been fortunate. We've stayed in the same neighborhood for a very long time. One of the real problems independent retailers have in the cities is obviously property. A good retail property is likely to that's usable for Christmas trees is going to likely to be something that's temporarily available during redevelopment. A Christmas tree lot is not going to compete with a office building going up, and so or a new car dealership going in. So they tend to be temporary locations, and retailers get bounced around a lot. One of the strengths of my business is that back in the year 2000, I went and conducted negotiations with the city of Los Angeles and entered into a long-term contract with the community college district to use a parking lot at a college because they don't move around. And I've been there, this is our 20th year in that spot. And so, that's a really important part of maintaining a clientele. You can't expect a clientele to chase you around the city when you're moving from lot to lot. And so this has been one of the real limitations on independent retailing.
Yeah.
And it's been a long-term trend where independent retailers are disappearing. In 2003, I wrote an article for the American Christmas Tree Journal called "The Way of the Milkman," and it was very prescient in that in its predictions of the issues facing the independent retailers that were going to force them out, and the property is the primary obstacle. And so we've worked with the college because they don't move around.
Okay. Okay. I had a question from one of the students, and I think maybe this will go to Jody, is if he can do, or Dave, how much of each retailer is independent box? And I mean, you've got independent box and you cut. How is that split in your mind in terms of the market today? I mean, in terms of who's got what market share? Do you, Mark or Jody, jump in or whatever? Any?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, because I'm not really, my partner would have that in the forefront of his brain because he does a lot of work with that, but I really don't have the numbers for that.
Well, most likely the big farms are going to have a better grip than the small guy. You know, from our perspective, I think the independent retail lots are capturing probably no more than a third of the overall market. In the East Coast, there is more of the independent tree lots because the older infrastructure allows for more spaces between buildings that don't exist in modern Western cities. And so there's more of the independent tree lots and there's more of the U-cut in the northern tier than obviously in the south. So the independent retail lots are capturing at most, I think, in my opinion, a third of it. The box stores, my guess would be 60%, and the rest split up with the U-cuts.
Okay.
Yeah, I would concur with Mark's figure that it would be in the low 60s for holiday tree farms as far as box stores, and independent retailers is on the decline, but being filled in by nonprofits and garden centers and nurseries and that sort of vein a little bit.
Okay.
But even those independent retailers or those not-for-profits are struggling to find the ground to operate the lot on.
Jumping back in, that's the one part of the independent retail business that's going to survive. We sell to a few people still, and these are the customers like a florist with a big property. He's been there for a generation. A small, you know, sort of a U-pick farm kind of operation that owns their own property. These are the kinds of properties, independent retailers that might survive because they do already control their land. But the guy who's trying to rent a property seasonally, he's pretty much toast. He's out.
Okay.
And the other interesting thing that I didn't foresee even 10 years ago was to have U-cuts calling me and wanting half a load or a load of trees, because there's so many people coming into their farm that they're exceeding their ability to grow up more trees to fit this demand. So they're having to have pre-cut trees along with the U-cut. So this is kind of it's a fascinating shift to me.
So would it be fair then for the experts that the big boxes have certainly reshaped the industry, taken a good hunk of that for the convenience market, but there still is demand for the not only for the tree but the experience, and although the independent guys are going out, they're still getting it maybe through U-cut or some. So there's a demand for an independent. There's a demand, let me say, for a non-Home Depot Christmas tree. Would you concur with that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, we've come to halfway, and I want to make sure I keep on schedule because I got a lot of stuff to cover. One of the things, the products that we're gonna propose to you are at least 4 or 5 really great promotional ideas that can be executed in a short period of time with very little money that helps you grow your business. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And one of the things that I've charged the students with is this whole notion of not only just selling one customer once, but retaining them as a customer. And what I was asking, this is more Mark and Jody, I think, primarily, but what sort of things have you guys done to sort of keep a customer coming back? In other words, I mean, it may just be hot cup of coffee or hot chocolate, but you know, I'm really focused on charging these students with the idea that one of the things I want to be judged on is our quantity, you know, our quantifiable results. In other words, we go into a market, we test this market, and we say, well, we were able to grow this thing 30% because of the things we helped do. And that's what we really want to do. That's what the fun part about marketing is. And what I'm wondering is, up until now, and again, this is probably more for Mark and Jody, is that did you have any tricks? Did you have any things that you did that kept the customer coming back?
What are you doing back east, Jody?
Well, actually, it's probably not a good question for me because I'm not a retailer. I'm a grower, which actually probably 85% of our sales go to big box. So retaining a big box customer versus a independent retailer are two different.
Well, let's talk about that just briefly, Jody, because I think the students would, because I've done business with Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart and stuff. Do these guys, are they, well, they're tough bargainers and stuff, but will they shop your product, I guess? Is it a big enough category where if you do a good job, you've got next year's business, or do they shop it around?
Well, I think it depends on the environment of the industry as a whole. Okay. In an oversupply situation, they don't hesitate to shop it and beat you up, so to speak, and price. And yeah, that is their job. That they have bosses and CEOs and people they have to look at. But the environment of the big box is just totally different than the independent retailer. Talking a little bit earlier about some possibly seedy retailers out there. Well, if in today's environment, if somebody comes knocking on our door looking for 3,000 to 5,000 trees as an independent retailer, that's a red flag, because there's a short supply of trees. They know that. So if somebody of that size is looking for trees, they've had issues with another grower, which doesn't mean it's the retailer's fault either. But there are certain red flags that then you start doing some investigative work, why this person is out looking for trees with that kind of number.
I see.
Well, and there's another factor in play when you're selling to the big box stores, and Jody, please correct me if I'm off base here, but there's barriers of entry in that you have to have some infrastructure and an ability to supply X number of trees consistently. I mean, these buyers are seasoned and they take a look at your operation, and if you're not of a certain size or you don't have EDI capabilities or ability to deal with guaranteed sale or this sort of thing, you're out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
With the retail customer, the trick about customer retention is really pretty straightforward. You know, you have to know what the customer is looking for and be able to deliver it, and in excess, I mean, deliver more than they expect. And you know, knowing what they're looking for is more than like I say again, is more than just a nice tree. They're looking for that level of service and a professionalism and a cleanliness and a appearance where there's a safe environment for their children. And so when you know, there's got to be Christmas music on, there's got to be certain elements there that are in place for them to have that experience. And if you provide them with that experience, it's why an independent retailer like mine charges roughly double what a Home Depot in my local area charges for a tree. Now, it's a better quality tree, to be certain, but there's a huge amount of it that's based on providing that experience for the families. And when you do that, the customer retention is automatic.
Okay. All right. So I want to shift and talk a little bit about pricing in the marketplace. Would you say in general then that there are two fundamental retail price points? There is sort of the big box price point, and then there would be the independent price point. And then would the variance in that be somewhere between 20 and 30%? Give a, and this could be maybe Bill or Dave or whatever, if you have any feeling for that whatsoever.
Well, I think in a simplistic view, the big box stores are ordering enough quantity, so there's volume discounting as you go. If somebody buys 1,000 trees or buys 100,000 trees, the price will probably vary just a touch. Now, what that percentage is there's a lot that goes into figuring that out. But you kind of have a baseline. Somebody comes in and buys up to 3 truckloads, it's at X. And if they're above that, they're going to get some discounting. And after they get over 10,000, there's discussions. And I mean, if it's 100,000, it's probably a different price point. But as far as the variance, that's so nebulous to try to describe.
Yeah, and the smaller lots take more service. They offer more service, but they take more service. When you load for a smaller retailer, it's a mixed load. You're doing so many of one size and species, and then you'll do some more. You'll do 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10, 11 of one species, and 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, all the size ranges of another species, and you're mixing those on a truck. So the service that they demand is much higher. Where on retailers or on chain stores, they'll because their volume is so large, they can have some straighter loads and some easier product mix to work with.
Okay, now
and there's a lot more what I'd call hand holding, especially if the lot operator hasn't been operating for 20 years or is at Mark's level where he can just do it with his eyes closed. You have to devote a lot of time to, say, your 1 truckload or less customer versus a more experienced chain store or garden center.
For consumer pricing, the independent retail lot is going to be charging sort of at a minimum 50% more than the box stores in order to cover the higher operating expenses.
Okay, that's good. That's a good number. Okay, so so we talk. I'm trying to make sure the students understand the value chain. We talk about distributors sometimes, and my question is, are there active distributors in this business, or is it farm direct to retail, or is there a market for distributors who take truckloads of trees and mix them together? Is there a market for that today, or has that gone away? And that's more of a Bill question.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, they're called brokers. You know, there's tree brokers out there.
Can you explain that to the class, please?
You bet. Yeah, brokers will they'll work in an area and buy product and can consolidate that product so that they can feed customers that they have. They'll have their own customer base, and they buy product to feed that customer base. And they may buy from a series of farms. They may buy some from Holiday, some from Greenbrier, some from Cub. They might buy, they buy from wherever they can get their product and sell it to fulfill their customers' needs. Much more difficult to do in the market we have right now because the supply is lower and there's not as much surplus product out there. So it's harder for someone as a broker to find product to feed their customers.
And their margins are squeezed something fierce as well. There's only so much an independent retailer, let's say, can charge, and as the prices have come back up for the trees, for the broker to make enough money in between this is rather challenging.
Does the broker take title, or does he have to pay for the merchandise, or is he like so he's taking that risk as well? That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure I get this point in because this is brought up by the students a number of times. We think this season is going to be affected by the COVID virus, and there's different opinions sloshing around as far as what that means. And what I'm trying to get from, and this is maybe a Mark and Jody question more or less, is that what are your thoughts about the season coming up, and what do you think specifically about this virus, whether it would help or hurt your business in this season? I want to get a feel for the students. Mark, why don't you hit that one?
Well, of course, it's something nobody's encountered before, and nobody has an answer. We're all making educated guesses as what to expect. My experience, I've got the benefit of having not moved around for 20 years, so the consistent sales records from that same location kind of give you a sense of what happens during different economic conditions. The last time, the 2009, 8 and 9 recession, our experience was that our unit sales didn't change very much, down a minor, insignificant fraction. But our average sale was way down. People bought cheaper trees, they bought shorter trees, they came in with a different budget in mind. And I believe that's how a lot of times people shop. They have a budget in mind, and they go out and they get the most tree they can find that's going to fit that budget. So our preparations are not so much, other than, of course, the health and safety changes we have to implement. But as far as how we think it's going to affect the marketplace, we expect the sales to be fairly consistent with years past, but at a lower price point.
Okay. This is one I want to make sure I get into as well, is one of the big dynamics that's interesting about this industry is this isn't a seasonal crop like corn where you can plant it and then 90 days later you've got a product that can sell. This is a different product. It has to be planted, it has to be taken care of. Half the time I'm talking to Dave, he's out in the middle of a field working on something. And so it's a long-term commitment. And I guess what I wanted to do is get a poll from the growers, because this is really a grower session, is are you planting more trees or less trees for the market 5 years from now? That's a question. Maybe Bill start and we can float around, go to Jody and stuff.
Sure. We're anticipating increasing our inventory, and we're working to do that. There are several things that play into that. One, it's difficult to find ground that's suitable for Christmas trees. So, and there's a lot of competition with ground, with blueberries and hazelnuts and other things that are very popular right now. Hemp, actually hemp's kind of dropped off, but we're working to increase our inventory, not dramatically, but we're working to inch it up a little bit, and because our sales are a little lower now than they were prior to product being in shorter supply. So we were at a higher level. It's dropped down a little bit. We want to get it back to where it was.
Okay.
And maintain it.
All right. What I want to do now is I want to kind of open it up to the students and to see if there is anything that they're interested in talking about or questions that they have. I want to maybe start. Alexis, do you have any questions? Anything you thought that was interesting or that you'd want to add to the conversation?
Well, the last question you just had them ask about what they were thinking in the next 5 years was what I was thinking. So covered that one. But otherwise, this has been a really informative meeting. So nothing more at the moment.
Okay. Laura, how about you? Are you there? I can hear her. She's there. Oh, there she is. Yep.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just a little busy right now at work,
sorry.
but
Yes,
I'm definitely listening to you guys. I appreciate all the insight.
So one thing, Chuck, that I want to make sure that the students understand is that the reason that this is so crucial to our future is that not only do we not want to have any more receding to the market, because we see in the next 5 to 10 years the potential for more trees being grown and sold, which would be very helpful. And so we're very interested in your efforts to help us out here. It could be market changing, and that's what we'd like to help make happen.
I want to jump in here because what the growers really lack is a real clear view of the consumer perspective. What is it about a real Christmas tree that makes any of you students want to buy one? Why would you choose one? Is it, the fact that it's real, the fact that it smells good? Is it the fact that it's, being grown on American farms? What are the important elements about why you make that decision? I have probably a better view of that facing the retail customer every year than most of the growers, and I'm still left guessing sometimes.
Walter, why don't you take a shot at that?
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna to bring in here. So I, like a lot of the groups here, we all are firm in the real tree environment and ideas. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look at it, I'm more of I go cut my own from the National Forest for $5. Part of that has to do with the heritage within my family, the hunting experience of going and choosing a tree, and I live in a more rural area where, again, that's readily available. When I did live in the Bay Area and those areas where it was at that hunting, going to a lot, again, it's a childhood nostalgia factor. I do take pride in the fact that American made, shopping locally, if you will, vice going to the big box store. Those are some of those thought processes that would drive and what has driven myself. My family is a desert people. They live in the Mojave Desert and still to this day always have real Christmas trees. It's still a firm belief within our family. It's just something that we're associated with. I don't know how or why. It is what it is. It's tradition. That's a big factor. And I know that for some of the local friends and stuff like that, and friends of the family, what has them choose a fake tree over a real tree is perceived convenience, factors of, oh, they have an apartment. A lot of people don't have, or they don't think they have this space. The perceived cleanliness, lacking of having to deal with pine needles and stuff like that. So those are some of those thoughts and things that we've seen on the customer retail side. And what makes me choose, again, for a real tree is really, it's a strong tradition with family. I've also got 20 years in the service, so tradition runs strong in my blood, as with a lot of things. And that's like one of the main focals, but also the experience itself of going and hunting and finding the perfect tree for the family. My brothers and sisters used to go out and we'd look and find one. And so that's the same experience that we like creating, but we actually go out into the woods. And that would be, if I was in a more urban area, then we would be looking for that experience at maybe a U-cut or a local lot, depending on what would be available.
Good.
Do you think there's an element of bringing nature into the home during the Christmas season? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge thing within our thing. We talk about like what smells like Christmas. I have the tree when we cut it. Last year's tree, stuff like that. I burned Doug fir to smell like Christmas in Christmas time. We're throwing that in the wood stove, and we're making Christmas smell. It's happening through the whole winter season. It's getting closer. Time to put the Christmas log on.
And I think this is one of the challenges that have given the students that they're working on they've got their they haven't been announced yet, but they're going to have their groups working with the retailers. But one of the things that's really important is that we engage these new people that may or may not have bought Christmas trees, engage them this season, retain them, for many, many years. And in the idea of monetizing this action, that they'll be very, very happy as a longtime customer. We don't want to build a one-off. We want to build on the tradition and the idea of nostalgia as one of the big points. And we think that this pandemic is going to actually open a door for resetting a lot of these family traditions. That's kind of where we're headed. But that's, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you mentioned the American farmer, I don't know how much people are aware of it, but there's really no large corporate interests involved in Christmas tree farming. I mean, there's independent corporate companies, that are, but they're not publicly traded, the big outfits.
Right.
And so it's very much the industry is still dominated by small family farms. It really is. And I don't know how much people are aware of that, but 95% roughly of the trees being used in the United States or grown in the United States, and most of the rest of those are coming out of Canada, this other 5%. And those are rough numbers. I don't know, somebody else might have a better number, but that's ballpark. And so it is an authentic sort of American experience. And one of the things people are doing is it's a labor intensive crop. And so when you're buying a tree, they're basically supporting people having jobs in rural parts of America. And so that's where the money goes. So I don't know, these seem like ideas. I don't know that they carry through or ever get through. I don't know how important they are either.
Okay. All right. Well, we've almost run out of time. I want to open this up for if there's any students that have any questions or comments you want to make before the end of the program. Otherwise, I'm going to do a recap and send it out to the whole group on what, and we also, again, had this thing recorded for the two that were absent for today. So are there any students that have any comments? Go ahead, Walter. Yep.
All right, this is for the panel. I have a question. I mean, I know you guys tapped the independent grower is running like a 50% margin. Question on that broker situation. Is there any numbers or ideas out there of like what percentage they're taking and then hitting, downstream for the independent? Is there a margin that's pretty typical or known for those guys?
I think they try to work on a dollar per, on a dollar amount per tree is what they're working on. And it's that doesn't mean if it's a $50 tree versus a $20 tree, I don't think they're really working on a percentage. They're working on a dollar amount per tree. They need to work on a $3 margin, or they work on a $4 margin or whatever. Just because that's what it takes for them to stay in business, to handle their product. And just because the product's more expensive, they don't have more into it. So from what I've seen, it's so much per tree. It's a $3 or $4. Dave, what do you see?
Yeah, the few brokers that I know that are still operating, if they're not clearing $5 a tree on top of the tree cost, they won't touch it. It just has to be, because there's going to be shrink, there's going to be returns, there's going to be this, that, and the other thing. It just has to happen.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So I'm just curious to look at, because again, our focal, as we saw, we're going to look to help that independent lot grower. So we're trying to see what avenues of approach we have to tackle this, to make this industry sustainable, and see where those margins are and what can be done. I have a good solid understanding. Everybody's in there to be business. Actually, that's my major. I'm designing a business myself, so got to be able to stay in business to have a business. So I just looked to see if there was what you might have.
Bear in mind, Walter, that brokers are a very small percentage of suppliers now. It's a very small segment of the supplier market. It's way down there.
If it was 0.1%, I'd be surprised.
I see.
I'm not
Go ahead,
seeing
Mark.
the focus. I'm not seeing the focus of this program being to boost the independent lot. To me, not at all. That may be one of the ways of presenting it because it's the most appealing to a consumer, but the object of the industry of the program is to increase the desirability and the communication about Christmas trees in alternative channels. That's going to be affecting every market channel. It's not at all about promoting the independent lot versus the other channels.
Well, I think we're mixing metaphors in that we have to start somewhere, and the independent lot is probably the most in danger of all the channels that are out there. So you start out with the independent lot, and your rollout may go to other channels as time progresses, but it's just what it is to start with, to have a beginning point.
And I think what we want to do is, Mark, is we want to look at this as again, as an industry, we want to apply just general marketing principles that these guys learned in my class in the spring, and actually create an environment where everybody wants to buy more Christmas trees every year. And the channels are always evolving, right? I mean, they're coming and they're going and they're doing things. So I guess, yeah, I think I agree with Dave's point that we need a certain focus, but in general, I mean, what we want is, we think nostalgia, and we think Christmas tree marketing is, we think that we could provide a lot of value in this area.
One of the things we've been doing in the last few years, and it's now roughly 10% of our business, is our online ordering. And this flies in the face of the nostalgia and the family experience and everything else. And what we're encountering is the customer who doesn't have a good time going out and picking a Christmas tree. We're encountering the customer who, the office manager who's ordering one for the office, so who doesn't care about that. And we expect that to grow this year with the pandemic, where more people are going to be ordering everything in, including Christmas trees. And we're making preparations to grow the delivery side of our business. I'm curious how much y'all think about that channel. Is that a viable channel in your minds? I mean, I'm turning almost roughly 10% of my volume doing it, which makes it viable to me, but we've been at it 4 years, and we're expecting it to grow significantly this year. I do think it's possibly a significant new channel for people. What elements would have to be there in a website-based sale for you to be, something authentic and something that would appeal to you?
Yeah, that's, any of the students want to take a crack at that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Mark, I feel that's a viable alternative. It's something we've discussed with amongst our groups. We've had an idea to kind of bring that online aspect. I think for it to be viable, I don't know what your guys' current business model is, but I would think of it more like the car volume, where they have the sites where the pictures of the actual vehicle. They even have those ones now where it's almost like a vending machine, where you punch in a code, you go to a building, and the car comes out. So that's definitely a viable option there. I think is definitely something there, and it's something we've talked about and had some ideas regarding. The online experience, especially with younger people, connecting with them, that's kind of like the way they communicate with the world now. So I agree that that's a viable experience, and we have had ideas exploring that options. And again, I don't want to make it like what I said was focusing on that group, but it was just like a start point to give us something to work about, because this industry is something right now that all of us are learning right now from you guys. Is most of us have no clue the process of how the Christmas trees get there. It's just like a lot of us like real Christmas trees, and that's what we're here to help make that succeed, because we want everyone, I mean, I personally would love everyone to have that experience of a real Christmas tree in their, in their house for that month time period, or whatever it is they choose to have it for.
And I think that's the purpose of this meeting today, was to give the students an opportunity to interface directly with people that are growing, and how that business has changed, and what you're looking at as new challenges. Because I don't want them to get my opinion, because just like the students, I'm learning the business as we're moving along. But I think that as we develop, and it is developing very quickly, we in our last meeting, we've got two or three ideas we're going to process down the line, and we've thrown a couple away. So I think we're actually ahead of schedule, and I think you'll be pleased as we develop this, what we'll see proposed from this group. So, but anyway, I don't want to keep anybody longer than I'm happy to. I'll talk forever, but I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure I was mindful of everybody's time. It's a nice day today.